Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing all right. Still a little congested. Maybe the tension of the game just kept clinching that congestion in and didn't let it clear. But otherwise, doing okay. Didn't have to spend the week in jury duty after getting excused yesterday.
That's definitely a plus. So at least something is, coming up good. We are here, today, Dad, to talk a little bit about last week's game. Packers losing 34-31 to the Lions. We're going to do a deep dive into this game. I think letting it sit with us for the weekend was probably for the best. I was frustrated after that game, but it is what it is.
Aging like a fine wine or stewing? Or what's the verb here?
Stewing and bitterness. No, but we are here to do a deep dive into this game. Packers, lose this game, fall to 9-4. They're currently still 6th in the NFC. They're one game ahead of Washington for the 7th spot, and then 2 games behind Minnesota for the 5th spot. So battling it out for those last playoff spots. But Green Bay loses this game. They're now 0-4 against teams with better records than them, with those losses, 2 to the Lions, 1 to the Vikings, and 1 to the Eagles. So they haven't beaten a team with a better record than them, which, at least all their losses do come to teams that are like very good teams we see, but still having a tough time beating those top of the pecking order teams. But we're going to talk about this game, what went right, what went wrong, what can the Packers change going forward to maybe, do better against these teams. Still a very close game. You know what I love to say? Good teams win, great teams cover. Although usually I guess when people say that, they mean cover and win. But the Packers did cover. But Dad, we're going to be talking all about this game. But first, some news. Packers signed guard Michael Jordan, not that one, to practice squad and released offensive lineman Spencer Rowland. He's a 2019 fourth rounder. He started 11 games for New England this year. Just some more interior offensive line depth because it clearly seems like they don't think Monk is ready to back up the interior offensive line. And they're just getting some more bodies there because right now they are playing tackles, backing up offensive linemen in the middle.
Apparently they didn't quite weren't satisfied with their interior line depth with Morgan out and playing tackles there. So he's been on the Packers practice squad, I think, in the past.
This is now the second interior offensive lineman they've signed to the practice squad in the last week and a half. So they're making a couple additions there at the guard spot on those that practice squad roster. In terms of injury updates, Dad, before we start getting into this game, though, still a couple of things to talk about there. We learned some more from, Matt LaFleur's press conference yesterday. A lot of players got dinged up in this game against the Lions. It was a very physical game. Evan Williams left that game with a concussion. He is still in concussion protocol, unfortunately. Javon Bullard left that game with an ankle injury, and he was getting, some scans done in the locker room during the game. The next day, rather, he got an MRI. He was in a boot and crutches after the game. Matt LaFleur did say he's week to week. So I think hopefully that means he's not going to have to go on IR, but I would imagine he's going to miss probably at least 2 weeks. Hopefully not any more than that. But obviously that's not ideal either. Secondary getting very thin there. Sean Ryan left the game but returned, so that's at least something. Dontavian Wicks also left the game but returned, and Matt LaFleur said he's all right. And then the last one, which is probably the most unfortunate and most worrying, is that Romeo Doubs is still in the concussion protocol. He missed the last game with it. He's actually missed the last 3 games with that concussion. And not ideal when you're in the concussion protocol for this long. The only silver lining is he did practice a little bit last week. So he's at least made some progress there. But the fact that he's still in concussion protocol, not ideal. Dad, any thoughts on those injuries?
Yeah, it is a little worrisome how long it's taken Dobbs to clear concussion protocol. It was, you could say that last week wasn't a full week because they played on a Thursday. So it was a little bit shorter than you might otherwise be. But it's... And he did do some practice, started to advance in the protocol a little bit last week.
Yeah.
We don't know how close he is yet.
Yeah, exactly. And
hopefully then the secondary depth is worrisome.
Very worrisome because, in this game, first Evan Williams goes out. They interestingly don't move Bullard back to safety. I think part of that is because the last time that this happened, when Evan Williams went out and they moved Bullard back to safety mid-game against the Jaguars, it did not go very well. And then they bring in Zane Anderson to play safety next to McKinney, and they leave Bullard in the slot. Then Bullard goes out. They move Keyshawn to the slot, and then they're playing Stokes and Valentine wide because Jair is also already out. So you're down already.
And Valentine as well.
So you're down already 3 starters in the secondary. Hopefully they can get Williams back this week. We'll see, though. We'll keep an eye on that. But, Dad, let's move into talking about this game. Gut check. What do you have? How'd this game make you feel?
Just watching, I was like whoever got the ball last was going to win. It just felt like there wasn't going to be a stop when you really needed one.
Yeah, it did definitely feel like one of those games where it's like, I hope we have the ball last, because it seemed like that whole second half it was just, all right, we'll score, okay, they score, okay, we score, okay, they score. And that's kind of how I felt about that game, though, was I was frustrated because it felt like, first half defense was playing well and the offense can't do anything. Okay, second half the offense is playing well and the defense can't do anything. And it was really frustrating from the defense's point of view because you know what they want to do. Now they did stop the run pretty well in this game, but I was frustrated because, hey, they're going to throw to the middle field. What did they do all game? They threw to the middle field with great success. What are they going to do? They're going to throw to the running backs. What did they do all game? They threw to the running backs. Can we get a stop on fourth down? No? Okay, cool. And then on the offensive side of the football, it's like, hey, offensive line, you're going against backups. Can we not get bullied for a full half, 2 to 3 quarters? Like, we're just getting completely bullied up front by backups. We have no plan for the blitz. Like, they're coming into this game with no pass rushers. You don't think they're going to blitz? And I'll talk about that later, but definitely a frustrating game because it just felt like Green Bay's game plan. I felt like they should have been more prepared at the start of this game because they started so slow. That was the big thing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They just started incredibly slow in this game.
I was going to say they got off to a bad start, and as if they weren't quite ready for what the Lions were going to do, and so then they had to adjust.
Yeah, and the adjustments were great, and the adjustments worked. And I will say, credit to them. They were down 10 at halftime and battled their way back. They could have, Detroit's a great team, even with players missing. And you were able to come back from 10 down to, take the lead and have the lead there at the end for a little bit. But ultimately, just not quite enough at the end of that game. And it's you get to beat a great team. You gotta play to the best of your abilities, and I think too many times in this game, Green Bay kind of just left a little bit to be desired there. Still, I think in terms of individual play, I thought a lot of players played well. I thought Green Bay. I think the highlight of the game, though, if I'm saying something really positive for Green Bay, is the level of physicality they played at was very good. This game was violent. This was one of the most violent games I've seen in a long time. And I think Green Bay did a really good job of matching the Lions' physicality. And so the whatever they said in the locker room pregame in terms of getting the guys emotionally ready to play that game, everyone was fired up. No one came out flat. That's the thing. They started bad, but it wasn't because anyone came out flat. Well, the offensive line came out flat, but the rest of the guys were definitely out there, playing very physically and playing well. But Dad, anything else before we get to talking about the offense, talking about the defense?
Well, I would say on the plus, as basically we were kind of even with the Lions.
Yeah.
It's just an evenly matched game, and somebody's going to squeak out the win, and it wasn't us this time. Now, can we
win one of these? Can we squeak out one of these?
Can we get the high leverage play when needed? Is the only thing lacking. Otherwise, I think we're showing that we're a top level team. We just need to get a couple of critical plays here and there.
Yeah, but it's just you can't get a stop when you really need it. 4 or 5 on fourth downs for the Lions. But we'll talk all about that in a bit. But Dad, let's start with the moment of the game in this one. Biggest moment of the game in terms of, we go by ESPN win probability and what swung the win probability the most. In this game, it was the Amon-Ra pass for 16 yards to the Green Bay 20 on the last possession of the game. It was 2nd and 17, and that made it 3rd and 1. It changed Detroit's win probability from a 62.2% chance to an 84.2% chance, swing of about 22%. I mean,
otherwise there weren't a lot of huge swings actually in this game. I had to search through the graph to find the spot. Sometimes it's really obvious. It's monster swing.
And not to say that this game was devoid of big plays. That's a different thing entirely. It's more just this game was so close for such a large stretch that nothing was really swinging it either way. I mean, you have the big Keyshawn pick, you have the big 4th down stop on 4th and 3 at their own at the Lions 30. Then you have the Lions scoring 2 more touchdowns on 4th downs. You have that crazy 4th down decision at the end, which was just wild. But yeah, we got a lot.
I didn't want him, as a Packer fan, I didn't want him to go for it on 4th down. I don't know how the Lions fans felt, but I felt no, I want him to kick the field goal now so we get the ball and have a chance. Because I didn't have much. I mean, what did you think? I didn't have much hope they'd get that stop.
I think it's a good question. I mean, the stats tell you it's the wrong decision. I will say, if I'm the Packers if I'm a Packers fan and I'm thinking about it, it's would you rather have your team have the ball with 30 seconds and a chance to tie, or your defense have one play to get a stop? I probably trust our offense more, right? Like,
I think
I trust our.
Would it have been about 40?
30, 40. Like, I'd rather have our offense with 30, 40 seconds at probably ball at the 30. And you just need to get, 35 yards, about 35, 40 yards, rather than, hey, it's 4th and inches, stop the Lions on just like a run up the middle, which they actually just did on 3rd and inches. So
I know.
The problem is you got to do it twice in a row, and that's always a little bit more difficult. I also don't think the Packers thought they were going to snap it. I think it looked like Green Bay was like stunned when they snapped the football. They were expecting him to get him to jump off sides, I think. But Dad, let's start. We'll talk about the defense a little bit later. Let's start with the offense, though, and let's start with what they're saying. Dad, any quotes from Packers coaches, Packers players after this one that you thought were insightful?
So I watched some of LaFleur's press conference, and responding to a question about Reed not getting many touches or snaps. He said, "We were in 11 personnel, and they kept playing what we were deeming to be a base defense with Adams, and they're playing like a 3-4 structure, and they're inviting you to throw the football. We knew it was important to continue to run the ball, and that's part of the reason why we were trying to go more in 12 personnel, where we can be better is making sure we have some of those plays for him in the game plan where he's tagged to go in there and play wide out and not get him off the field because they're basically only playing him in the slot."
Yeah,
and is what he meant.
And yeah, I watched that presser, and he also talked about, he's like, we had things drawn up for Reed. It's just like, okay, the first play of the game where they're taking the big shot off, I think it was off play action, and they take the sack, that was designed to go to Reed. They had another one that was pass interference that was designed to go to Reed. They had another one, a 3rd down, they just don't connect. So like they had things drawn up for Reed, but I did think it was interesting that he's like, we need to get him in non-slot situations. This is essentially what he's saying. We have to tag him in there to go play wide out. So like getting him in there in more 2 receiver sets. I think that would be awesome because he's your best receiver. So yeah, let him play in more 2 receiver sets. I know he is mostly a slot receiver, but he is able to play wide. We saw that at Michigan State when he was, in college. I think that's a really good call out by LaFleur to be like, hey, we just got to get him on the field more.
Yeah. And it seemed like those calls for Reed were all early in the game.
Yeah.
Or a lot of them were early in the game and then didn't get back to him much later.
Well, yeah. And LaFleur also pointed out, it's like, hey, we only had 44 plays. Like,
yes,
they didn't have a lot of plays.
That's another issue. It was like they got, outsnapped by a crazy number.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is, Green Bay was hitting big plays, which, is something. And they were getting short fields when they didn't. Like they, had the one off the pick that was like a 20-yard field, one off the forced 4th down. That was a 30-yard field. So you're not going to have the ball as much in those scenarios, and you're fine with not having the ball as much in those scenarios. But not as good ball control in that one for sure. But yeah, I agree with, most people's assessment. They need to, focus on getting Reed the ball more. And I don't, and like LaFleur was pointing out, it's like we tried to. It's just, those plays didn't hit like how we wanted them to. Yeah. But offense, I guess we'll start with some positives. What do you wanted to say about the offense that you thought went well in this one?
Okay, so what I had, we talk about the number of plays. Well, they had 6.6 yards per play, and it was the 8th best on the week, and better than the Lions, who are only at 5.1, better than the Packers' season average of 6.3, which is already 3rd best in the league. I think the 6.6 would be 2nd best. I think Ravens are like 6.8, a little bit better than the Packers of this week. And significantly better than the Detroit's average that they give up on the season of only 5.4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Green Bay moved the ball well. They hit explosives. That big one to Christian Watson down the sideline. Like, they threw the ball well. It's just... it's tough.
Yeah. And the other thing I would mention is like after it seemed like kind of a bad start in the first, the pass pro had a good game overall, gave up the second slowest time to pressure on the week at 3.16 seconds, which is significantly slower than Detroit's season average of 2.73.
Yeah, but I want to give the caveat that you're going against mostly backup offensive linemen, and then Aleem McNeil gets hurt 4 plays in. It's Zadarius Smith and a bunch of guys off the street wearing numbers in the 60s. Like, you should never have been in the position to begin with that you're getting to get rocked in the beginning.
How did you get the slow start to begin with?
Yeah, like O'Connor. I've never heard of this guy in my life. is just roasting Myers over and over and over again to start the game. And I'm like, okay, guys.
We can talk about that. Yeah, that's in there. That's in here.
Yeah. But sorry, yeah, go ahead. Positives. Positives.
But why don't you go on with what you had?
Yeah,
for positives.
And, you mentioned yards per play, and another thing that we talked about pregame was capitalizing in the red zone, and Green Bay did a really good job in this one. They went 4 of 5 and getting touchdowns in the red zone, which is great, especially against a team like the Lions, who had the second best red zone defense in the league in terms of allowing touchdowns in the red zone. So that's fantastic. And then the one where they didn't convert was a questionable offensive pass interference call that has never been officiated. Has never been officiated that way. Exactly. And but anyway, and Jacobs ran for 3 touchdowns, so they were running it well in the low red zone within the 5. I thought that was really good. That's like the only
something
place
they've struggled with for years. So that was nice to see them be able to power those short yardage plays into the end zone.
Yeah, so that was really good. Low red zone, being able to do that, being able to punch it in the red zone. I also thought Jordan Love, I thought he played really well in this game. Honestly, I know the numbers aren't flashy and numbers aren't crazy. Like we mentioned earlier, they only had 44 plays. He only threw it 20 times. 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns, no turnover-worthy plays. Just the play where he dodges the free blitzer that Jacobs misses, resets in half a second and whips it to Watson, like crossing up the field. Insane. The throw to Kraft.
Like a fingernail over the the defender.
Touch and zip. And on a weird platform with a guy still on his back that he just made miss. Fantastic play. I thought he scrambled really well in this game. I thought he was moving around well. I thought that I think he only took 1 sack despite being pressured 9 times, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yeah, I've got that in there as a.
And then
only took the 1.
And the touchdown pass to Kraft was just nutty as well, the way he zipped that in there. The throw to Watson down the sideline for the bomb was perfectly in stride. I thought that Love played really well in this game, and overcame poor offensive line play in the beginning of the game, and for the most part, I thought he was really good and had some just wow level throws in this one.
Yeah, so a couple of things I add to Love. He was 6th on the week in EPA, so plus completion percentage over expected according to RBSDM, and also 6th on the week in NFL passer rating.
Yeah.
He was 8th in average depth of target, according to PFF for the week at 9.5 yards, and had the 4th most yards per attempt on the week as well. So he was, slinging it downfield as well, but maintaining efficiency.
Yeah, and I do think, like, we'll talk about this in the negatives maybe a little bit, but there was not a whole lot out there that was easy for him. They did not give him any easy buttons in this one, it felt like. Yep. It felt like every single time the Packers had to make a play, it was just like, go do this insanely hard throw. Whereas, like, you look at the other side and it's Jared Goff, it's like screen, middle of the field throw, screen, middle of the field throw. And I'm like, can we make this a little bit easier on our quarterback, please? Like, we are, like, putting so much on his plate in this game. And, he played really well. You end up scoring 31 points. You'll take that every day. Started slow a little bit, but I would say most of that was just the offensive line just getting him absolutely crushed back there for a good quarter of the game. But yeah, and I would like to see more easy buttons for him so he didn't have to do all these insane throws, but it is still cool when you have a quarterback that can make them. Anything else on the positive side that you wanted to talk about, Dad, or do you want to move on to maybe some negatives?
Let's move on to the negatives.
Okay, I have a few, and at the same time, you do score 31 points. You do go, you put up some good numbers. A couple of those are on short fields, but hey, you have to capitalize on those short fields. You hit some explosives. You move the ball pretty well. But I do have more negatives than I do positives, unfortunately. And I don't know if that's just because it's a loss. Probably in a win, I'd have fewer negatives, but, it is what it is. For me, I have several negatives, starting with the offensive line. Love was pressured on 37.5% of his dropbacks, which would be 9th most in the league over the course of the season. Now, some of those, like you mentioned, time to throw and time to pressure were pretty slow. So some of those were just having to hold the ball back there. I thought early, though, that the offensive line just did not, just got bullied up front, weren't ready for blitzers. And then when the blitzers did come and they picked them up, guys were just losing their one-on-one battles, whether it was Zadarius Smith planting Zach Tom on the ground, whether it was Josh Myers getting blown by multiple different times by O'Connor, just unblocked. And then later on, they struggled to pick up blitzes also. But yeah, Love was pressured a lot. And then in terms of the running game, essentially they ran well on one drive. They had one drive where they were able to run the ball. The first touchdown drive, they ran 8 times for 46 yards and a success rate of 100%. That's the running backs ran 8 times for 46 yards. Love also had a few scrambles in there. Besides that drive, they ran 12 times for 30 yards and a success rate of 33.3%, which would be near the bottom of the league against mostly backups. I get what LaFleur was saying, where they were essentially running into very difficult looks to run against, but you're also going against backup linemen. Like, at the end of the day, just win your 1v1 matchup against a guy that, you are supposed to be better than. Like, and too many times I thought Packers linemen just didn't do that. Got beat up front, got out physicaled up front. And so I was really disappointed by the offensive line and disappointed about this ties into that. Back to, what I was talking about with pass protection, not having answers for the blitz. The Lions are going to want to play man coverage and blitz, especially with multiple more defensive linemen out and no pass rushers really available outside of Zadarius Smith. In this game, in the first half, the Packers were blitzed 7 times with negative 1.33 EPA per dropback, which would be, by far dead last in the league, like by a ton. And then in the second half, they made an adjustment and they were blitzed 8 times and had 1.16 EPA per dropback, which would be by far first. So clearly you have an answer to it, but you did not come out prepared in the first half for that. And that's part of the reason you started so slowly. Is you just got blitzed into oblivion. Love got crushed like 5 times and is having to sprint for his life back there. And then you make an adjustment and it works. But why was that not in the game plan to start the game? And so that was frustrating from what I was watching.
Yeah. The other thing I was looking up while you were talking, instead of paying attention, as the stack boxes. So the Packers had to run into stack boxes at the 3rd highest rate on the week.
Yep. Yeah, and that was what LaFleur was saying, was like, hey, they were showing us looks that are hard to run into. And he's like, but I didn't feel like we could just abandon the run. And I guess let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, because I was looking it up, they actually did pretty well against stack boxes, comparatively. Yeah. They had the 5th most yards and the, the 5th best success rate into stack boxes.
Yeah. And so, you're getting a lot of stack boxes and you don't want to abandon the run. I get that. I think at some point you just got to take what they're giving you, though. Like,
take advantage of the
played
weaknesses
into their hands. Like, and I do think part of that also stems into my final negative, which is I thought the receivers just didn't do enough in this game. Packers targets per NFL Pro had an average separation of just 2.9 yards. That would be the lowest in the league over the course of the year. Lions were daring the Packers to throw, and the Packers just couldn't get open. I think they missed Dobbs in this game a lot. It was nice to see Wicks get going. He had a nice game, and hopefully if he can, put together some games here at the end of the season, they have another man beater in their pocket. But just, it felt like everything was very hard. Like, every play for the Packers offense required like a ridiculous high level of execution that I don't think it should not have had to been that hard, is kind of how I came down on it.
Yeah, when you watch, it looks nice because, ooh, another great play. Ooh, another great play. Why do we always have to make a great play? And they've got guys running wide open.
It's like, why are they running a screen for 10 yards a pop? And we are ripping downfield corner routes,
tight window,
super tight
coverage.
window. It's like, oh man, it's like everything felt way harder. Nothing felt in rhythm. You're getting stuck in 3rd and longs. You only go 1 of 5 on 3rd down. And I will, mention that to just transition to some of the negatives that you had, because I think you were going to talk about 3rd downs as well, right?
Yeah, I have the 3rd down conversions, only 1 of 5. On the week, they were 6th worst in the league in yards per play on 3rd down, with only 4, and 5th worst in EPA per play on 3rd down. The teams that were worse, Miami, they're good offense, but the Giants, the Bears, and the Browns.
Yeah.
So that's not good company for offense.
Not great.
I didn't, we talked about their slow start where they start off with 2 quick punts on the first 2 possessions. They only had 19 combined yards, which really hurts when you choose to defer and Detroit gets the ball first and scores right away, to have your first 2 possessions come up with essentially nothing.
I was surprised we deferred. Right?
Yeah, I feel like on the road
against Detroit, on the road.
And you're on the road. You want to get it. If you can get a score early on the road, you can take the crowd out. And the crowd was not out of it. They were super into it.
Yeah. And it's and they march down the field and score on you instantly. Don't you want to take some of their play action and running game off the table? I didn't understand that really. And I will say,
I think he was asked about that in the presser. He said something about, well, last time we had the ball first and it didn't work out so well, or something like that.
What are your thoughts on the lack of aggression on offense on fourth downs? What are your thoughts on that? Specifically the 4th and 3.
I was disappointed when the Packers didn't go for it on fourth down. I felt like this is a game where you want it. You know your opponent is going to use as many downs as they can.
Yes.
So I think you need to match that aggression.
Yeah, and the one that really sits with me is it worked out for the Packers. So if you want to play that game, it did work out. But with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, the Packers are at 4th and 3 at their own 37-yard line. I think I would have liked to have seen them go for it and set like a tone that like, hey, we're going to be aggressive too. Like it's not
wasn't there one that was even further downfield that they passed on as well?
Let's see. There was also a 4th and 6 at their Green Bay 49. That one, I think, at a 4th and 6 is a bit of a toss-up.
But it's midfield.
But it's 4th and 6. Like, I think it's pretty much, and you end up with that punt pinning them
at the 11 or the 9?
Yeah, well, you
or
pin them
the
at
8, somewhere around there.
You pin them at the 8 on the punt, and then you end up getting the ball at your own 48 and go 3 and out, which, not great. But
right. I mean, I guess my argument against it is you had just recently seen the Lions march down the field and score right away.
Yeah.
And so you're now relying on the defense to get the stop, by pinning them deep when you already didn't show it.
I think 4th and 4 or less, yes. I think 4th and 6 is like, I mean, you weren't converting 3rd and 6s. So, like, how are you going to convert 4th and 6? That's kind of how I
get 2 shots at it instead of 1.
Well, yeah, that's fair. That's the thing is, like, they also never felt like they were playing for a 4th down conversion, which the Lions do. If they have 3rd and 8, they're cool with getting 6 yards so they can get 4th and 2 and convert that. Like, the Packers don't do that.
We were giving those up over and over again to give them 4th and 1 and 4th and 2 or 4th and a couple inches.
Yeah, we'll talk about the defense later, but let's keep going on the offense. Anything else that you had as a negative?
Yeah, I mean, what I had is, especially at the beginning, inability to control the center of the line against Detroit's deep backups. Myers had an abysmal pass blocking grade from PFF of only 13.2, giving up two pressures out of 27 pass blocking snaps against whatever O'Connor, whatever his first name is.
Yeah, I have no idea. We'll just call him O'Connor. Yeah, he's yeah, I mean, Myers really struggled in this game. And I was actually thinking, like, that he would be, because the last time we played the Lions, he didn't play. And he'd been playing his, best football so far this season. And then I think, like, the last 2 weeks have been, back to what we saw last year and the year before that. And they really need him to just play better. I mean, they just need him to play better.
It felt like we had turned a corner a little bit, and he was, becoming one of the more important players to line up and get out there.
Yeah.
We missed him when he didn't play, and then he had maybe his worst game of the year.
I mean, it's hard to imagine one that's worse, especially when you consider the context of, like, you're not going against starters and you're getting whooped by backups. Like, it was a very poor game from him, I thought. Ryan wasn't a whole lot better, although Ryan run blocked better, I think. But yeah, it was a tough one, man. I mean, I don't know, like, why is the offensive line just getting out-physicaled up front? Because, like, there were so many throughout that second half, like, outside of that one drive where they were able to run the football. So many. 1st and 10, run for a yard. Second and 9, run for 2 yards. Oh, 3rd and 7, you're in 3rd and 8. Like, it's...
I think part of that is a consequence of it's like our 5 against their 8.
Yeah.
And, we have going one-on-one with receivers and can't get open.
Yeah. And it's tough. Yeah, like we mentioned, the lowest average separation in the league, or it would have been over the course of the season. You're not getting open. Everything feels hard. Everything feels difficult. They're blitzing a ton. You're not really punishing those blitzes. Like, even when you're connecting on those passes, you're not getting, like, massive plays out of them. Although you got a couple, but
the blitz pickup was not very good, especially early.
And it felt like even when you did, the linemen just lost their one-on-ones. And it's like, okay, like, if they're going to get 5-on-5 up front and you're going to lose to backups, like, you're good. Like, what are we doing here? Like it's too hard to move the ball if you can't win one-on-ones up front. And so you have to get into max protect scenarios, and then you only have 2 guys out in the route. And then it's a whole big other problem that you have to deal with. But anything else on the offense, Dad, that you wanted to touch on, or anything that made you think? The only thing that made me think in this game is, like, Kadeem Telford is the backup guard, I guess, question mark. Sean Ryan came out. We mentioned that earlier for a few plays. Looked like a chest or a stinger. I thought it looked like a stinger to me, but
maybe that was it. I wasn't quite sure. That's why I had a little question mark. When he got with the chest, was it shoulder? What was it exactly? I don't.
It kind of looked like he just got bent up a little bit, like his neck got bent. It looked like a stinger.
I was thinking it was like an impact. He got hit, but I'm not sure exactly what.
But either way,
the injury was.
He came out. Kadeem Telford went in at right guard, and that was surprising, but I guess not surprising given the fact that it would have been him, Dillard, or Glover. So I think Glover was active in that game. But so yeah, I guess it does make sense that it's Telford of those guys, but hey, he's your backup guard, I guess.
Yep, he's the first man up for any of the interior spots.
Maybe any of the spots, honestly, except maybe left tackle. Spots, they might put Dillard in at left tackle if left tackle needs backup, but the other 4 spots, I think it might be Telford as your 6th guy with Morgan out. Although, Morgan's at 4? Has he missed his 4 games yet?
I was going to ask you the same question, so I guess neither one of us knows the exact answer. I didn't look it up ahead of time.
Anything that
I could spend time looking it up now and have some dead air while I'm searching the internet.
Well, anything that made you think while I looked that up, anything that made you think on offense?
So the other thing, I put in is like Love had the second longest time to throw on the week at 3.22 seconds, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? So maybe the protection's, holding up for a while, but he's got to hold on to the ball because nobody's getting open.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So that was the one thing that was making me think, and it's probably better on the whole to get the ball out quickly and keep the offense moving and go for higher success rate.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see some screens. I feel like we never run screens. Maybe we're just bad at running screens, though. So that's also a possibility. I feel like we never run screens to our running backs. The only person we seem to run screens to is Tucker Kraft. Is the only guy we'll run a screen to. And I just looked it up. Morgan has missed 4 games, but the fact that we have not heard anything about them opening his practice window kind of makes me think he's going to end up missing some more games here, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's been radio silence so far on him since he got put on IR.
Yeah, so hopefully he's able to come back at some point. They need that offensive line depth. I thought he'd been playing pretty well when he did play, but I guess we will see. All right, Dad, should we move on to the defensive side of the football? Anything that they're saying in terms of quotes from players, coaches?
Yeah, so there was a locker room interview of Kenny Clark by Larry McCarron. And he said, "I just think we got to get more timely stops. 4th down, we did a great job of stopping them and getting them into that situation. But when they got into those 4th down situations, we didn't get enough stops. Honestly, I think we played a solid game. We've just got to get stops on 4th down for sure. Timely stops."
Yeah, and I thought, we'll talk about it, but, you let him go 4 or 5 on 4th down. You get the 1 stop, so that is something. But once again, 2 touchdowns on 4th down. That's the same as the last Lions game. 2 touchdowns on 4th down. You take one of those off the board, you win one of those downs, it's an entirely different game. And once again, they're just generating massive expected points added on these 4th down, calls because you just can't get off the field. And, you do get one, which really swung the game, in the direction of the Packers when they get the ball at the 30 and end up capitalizing and scoring a touchdown. But 4 different times, they are able to keep the drive going. So, and the thing is, they go 7 of 15 on 3rd down, the Lions do, which is by itself quite good. And then they go 4 of 5 on 4th down. So really what they went was 11 of 15.
11 of 15.
On extending drives.
Yes, opportunities.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because some of those 3rd downs.
I think of it the same way. That 7 of 15 is a little bit of a mirage because it's really.
Yeah. Because some of those 3rd downs, they're not trying to convert on 3rd down. They're trying to get it to 4th and short so that they can then convert. And so you let them go essentially 11 of 15 extending drives. That's why they run so many more plays than you. That's why they have the ball so much longer than you. And it's just not good enough from the defense pretty much from the first quarter onwards. Like the first quarter, they showed up. And then from that point onwards, I mean, you give up 34 points. Like you're not going to win many games giving up 34 points. But Dad, we're already kind of talking about it. Do you want to start with some of the negatives on the defensive side of the football?
Yeah, let's go to those. So according to NFL Pro, Green Bay had the 4th lowest pressure rate on the week at 22.7%, which is worse than Green Bay's average of 30% and would be last on the year for a whole season.
I will say, though, only 2.49 time to throw, which would, be very low in terms of the league. That's like Tua numbers. and 2.38 seconds to pressure. So they were getting fast pressures, but it did feel like there were many points in this game where Goff was able to hold the ball back there.
Yeah, and then of course, as we talked about, the high leverage plays on defense. Fourth down, 4 or 5 attempts with 2 touchdowns, and including the first game, that now makes 6 of 7 on the year fourth down success.
Yeah,
for the season, Detroit's fourth down conversion rate is 68%. League wide, the fourth down conversion rate is 51%. Buffalo leads with a crazy 87%. I don't know how, maybe it's just like a small number.
Yeah,
of attempts.
It's just
and the third down conversion rate was basically right on Detroit's average of 7 of 15, just a little under 50%. But Detroit's EPA per pass on third down was 6th best in the league on the week.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just looking at some of the pressure numbers really quick. You mentioned like not able to get pass rush. This was something I think Justice Mosqueda also pointed out, was the Packers linebackers had 5 pressures, and the Packers defensive linemen had 5 pressures. So, I mean, you're just not getting enough from the defensive line in terms of pressuring the quarterback. Although I did think they played better in this game than they had. Like anecdotally watching it, like I thought they played physically. They made some good plays against the run. But yeah, the D-line's just not giving you enough right now in the passing game for the most part.
Yeah, and the quick passes across the middle, the screens take away those pressure chances.
Yeah, slow you down a little bit. Yeah. I mean,
also they gave up 27 first downs.
Yeah. I mean,
and 36 minutes of possession.
I mean, they didn't give up many, massive explosives, but
no explosives. They just it's just the slow march down the field, which is the one that really is frustrating at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it felt a lot like the Joe Barry defense against San Francisco, where it's like, okay, you need one stop. That's like one stop and you win the game. Nope. Just march it right down the field.
Or how about we just give the score in
take the ball back, please.
1 minute or 30 seconds to get the ball back.
Can we shuffle them into the end zone in a scrum from the 30? Can we just carry them the whole way?
Carry them down. Drop in the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I think my biggest negative though in this game, wasn't necessarily the D line. I thought it was just the middle of the field defense was awful. It was awful, and we talked about this, in pregame. It was like, hey, the Dolphins carved you up in the second half in the middle of the field. I'm worried about that against Goff, and in this game, he goes 16 of 21 for 157 yards and 3 touchdowns. Did have the 1 pick, but to the middle of the field, specifically the intermediate middle of the field. He was 6 of 8 for 106 yards or 13.3 yards an attempt. You cannot win giving up 13 yards an attempt in the middle of the field.
You may have noticed I left that part for you because you were talking about it before games. Like, okay, the middle of the field defense, it has to be talked about, and I knew you would really want to talk about it. So,
and it's like I get that, it's not.
It really
easy.
hurts not having Cooper out there.
I know, but I get that it's not easy when you're not getting pass rush either, and he's able to pat the ball back there a little bit. But at the same time, it's like by the 7th one, you know where he's throwing the ball. He's going to throw one of those deep in cutters. He's going to throw a dig. He's going to throw they're going to just run dagger. Come on, guys! They're going to. That was frustrating. It was frustrating to just watch it over and over and over and over and over again. Same play.
And the time to throw was really fast.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, they couldn't. It felt like it was either a 12-yard throw to the middle of the field, 15-yard throw to the middle of the field on a first read, usually his first read, or it was a screen. And that was the other thing. We were terrible defending screens, and it felt like we were shocked every time they ran it. Per PFF, Goff was 7 of 7 for 57 yards on screens, 8.1 an attempt. Compare that to 6.6 an attempt on non-screen passes. So the easiest pass
more on screens than non-screens.
More on screens than non-screens. And so it's like, that's not a hard play for the offense to execute. And shout out to Ben Johnson for drawing those up. But I mean, it's easy. Just dump it off to a running back, and it's a free 8 yards. It's a free 8 yards every single time. And it felt like we were shocked every time they ran it. And between, the middle of the field, crossers and deep digs, deep in-cutting routes and screen passes, we just had no answer. They just alternated which one they did every single time. And we that sets, I think, the blueprint for a lot of other offenses to attack us. And so that's something I'm going to see is what's the adjustment there? I don't know what the adjustment is. Having Cooper back probably helps, but it doesn't solve it.
So here's a question. We just so intent on, we have to get pressure on Goff. We have to get pressure on Goff. We're just going so aggressively upfield that we were just, easy pickings for a screen.
But what do you want them to do? You can't afford to slow. You can't afford to slow down the pass rush anymore. It's already not getting there. And I do.
So the question is whether that works for every team.
Yeah, I mean that. But the problem is you're probably gonna have to beat this team if you want to go where you want to go.
We do, and we have to stop these slow starts.
Yeah.
Slow starts against good teams is one of the things that's
death knell.
Us.
Yeah, it's a death knell. And I will say, on those screens, they didn't give up a lot of big explosive. It's not like they were giving up 50 yards on a screen. They actually tackled really well in this game, I thought. Only 4 missed tackles on 60 tackles is that's pretty fantastic. And so they got him down. It's just there were so many different times where it's I see Gibbs catching the ball out of the backfield, and it's 3 linemen on 3 defenders. And he's going to get past that first wave, and then the safety would come and make the tackle, but it would be 9 yards downfield.
It's going to be
10 yards
first
downfield.
Down.
Yeah, and so it's it just felt like every single one they had perfectly drawn up, and it was easy 4-on-3 out there. And it's okay, that's a really good look against what we're doing. Why do they have that lined up every single time?
Here's the thing that we should have mentioned earlier. Now I'm thinking about how the alignment and how things are running and how they seem to know what to do against us. This was more of an offensive thing, though, what I'm thinking of. Stop running the clock down to the last second so they know exactly when to jump at the snap.
Yeah, I think...
Because I think that helped O'Connor
it did.
In the
yeah,
rush.
And yeah, it definitely did. And that was one thing that I think Kurt Benkert pointed out was it's not Allmeier's fault. If you're snapping it at 0 seconds, the guy has an inherent jump at you, or jump on you rather. And I was going to say, I thought anytime they went into anytime they hurried up, anytime they went into a hurry-up offense, we looked dazed and confused. We looked absolutely lost out there. Call us Matthew McConaughey. But it's anytime, the touchdown to, I think it was Patrick, or maybe it was Amon-Ra.
Which one?
I know, right? But one of the touchdowns, Eric Wilson's just doesn't get set because they go quick. And so it's and the reason they got confused is because Amon-Ra St. Brown was in the backfield. And so everyone got thrown off by that because they hurried up to the line. Amon-Ra's in the backfield. It's kind of an unusual look there. And Eric Wilson's not lined up right, and so they get a touchdown. And so it's okay, that can't happen.
I think the pass to Gibbs for the touchdown also was one where I don't think they were quite set right, even though he did a nice move to break.
They were set, but it's just
break to the inside.
Why are we lining up McDuffie one-on-one on Jahmyr Gibbs? I don't even blame McDuffie. He can't guard him. He is never going to win that matchup.
When you put players in the bad position, that's not a player problem.
It's what do you expect to happen there? He's gonna lose that matchup. That was it. I think Andy Herman pointed out, he fakes to the flat. He didn't need to fake. He could have just ran to the flat. He would have been open anyways. It didn't matter. But yeah, so that wasn't ideal, obviously. In terms of the defense, I thought that the do you have any other negatives, or do you want to transition to some positives?
I think we got the negatives, but the defense wasn't all bad news.
No, it wasn't. I thought that they played really physically. I thought that they brought a lot of intensity and passion to the game, which obviously just sounds like, coach speak, but I think it matters in a game like this, in a divisional game. They were up to the task from they did not come out flat on defense. They came out firing on defense. Shout out to all the missed tackle numbers. They were laying hits. I thought Kenny Clark had his best game of the year, which is an exciting development. That's my biggest silver lining from this game is Kenny Clark looked really good because he was beating Ragnow a lot, and I don't think Ragnow had his best game. Right after I immediately say that my hot take is that he's the best lineman that they have. He has probably the worst game I've seen him play. Thank you, Ragnow, for shout out. Could have helped us maybe even a little bit more if you wanted to play even worse.
We should have cursed more of their players by praising them before the game.
Exactly. But no, I thought that Kenny played fantastic. I did want to shout out. I thought that the D-line was okay. I know that the pressure numbers aren't great. We talked a little bit about the pressure rate being low, but that Goff was getting it out fast a lot, although anecdotally there was still a lot of times where I do think that low time to throw number is a bit a function of the number of screens they threw. I would be interested in seeing what his, time to throw on non-screens was, because that's going to skew your numbers when you're throwing 7 screens in a game. But they also stuffed the Lions on 23.5% of their runs, which is, a D-line stat in my opinion. That would be the second highest on the season amongst defenses. And normally the Lions are only stuffed on 13.7% of the runs, which is the fourth lowest in the league. So I thought the D-line was getting in the backfield. There was that awesome play from Wooden where he shot upfield. There was that almost awesome play from Carl Brooks where he is literally in the handoff. He is in the handoff.
He's
and he just
grabbing Goff and trying to reach over and also grab the running back at the same time.
Yeah, and he doesn't quite get there. So I thought they were really penetrating well at times, especially in the run game. Also, shout out to Zane Anderson on that 3rd and inches. Oh, what a play! I mean, my goodness, that's like not a D-line
I have
thing,
him as one of my things.
He was solid. Yeah,
we got to give some shine to Zane Anderson for emergency duty. You know, people were saying, well, we're stuck playing Zane Anderson. Let's say he did well. He had 3 tackles, including that stop on 3rd and 1 to force the 4th down.
Yep.
And, unfortunately, they got it on 4th down. And he had no missed tackles and an above average run defense grade. So, he came in when he needed to and did his job.
The question is what he looks like in coverage. I'm not surprised he's a decent run defender because he's a special teams guy. Like, that's his thing. So he should be good at tackling. I'm going to be curious what he looks like in coverage after a team has a week to game plan against him. Hopefully, we don't need to worry about that, and Evan Williams is able to clear concussion protocol on a bit of an extra rest week, although that's usually not how it works. But Dad, I mentioned that they stuffed the Lions on 23.5% of their runs. The run defense was really good in this game. I know overall. You had some numbers on that as well that you wanted to share.
Right. So they only gave up 3.6 yards per rush for the game, and only 3.24 yards per rush to the running backs. They only gave up 0.56 yards before contact per attempt, which was 9th best on the week, and 1.15 yards less per attempt than Detroit's average. Mm-hmm. So normally Detroit's got a lot more, an extra yard and a bit before first contact on their running plays. So the Packers doing a good job of holding up at the point of attack and slowing down the run. Detroit was also second to last in rush EPA on the week, so 25th. And 22nd in rush success rate. Coming to the game, Detroit had the 3rd best rush EPA and the 2nd best rush success rate. So, the Packers held one of the top rushing teams in the league to being one of the bottom rushing teams on the week.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's good run defense.
It was great run defense, and I thought, it was well played by, I think Kenny had 5 different stops in this game per PFF, as did Quay Walker.
I think I had him like 6 stops. It's his run defense. He led the team in run defense grade by PFF.
Yeah, and
and he had the 5th best run defense grade for all interior defensive linemen in the league on the week.
Yeah, and going against a good interior of the Lions. And man, I just thought that when you're able to slow down the Lions' run game, because that's the number one problem. You need to first, before anything else, stop the run, and they did that. And that's the harder task, in my opinion. It's just that you just didn't do the other stuff. All the other things were the problem, but you did stop the number one problem. So I did want to give them, a shout out for that. And that was the main thing, is I thought that everyone played the run really well in this game. Everyone tackled physically. You had guys firing off the ball. I already mentioned Wooden and Brooks making good plays in the backfield. Kenny having a really good day. I thought, almost everyone made a play in the run game at some point. Obviously, also, we forgot to mention in the injury report that Lucas Van Ness went out with a thumb injury, but then came back.
Right. But he was able to come back, yeah.
Yeah, so there's at least injury. That. He got an x-ray mid-game, so it seems like that was at least good, given the fact they had him return.
He's going to be playing with a club.
Yeah, but I think they just had it heavily wrapped, not clubbed, so at least there's that. Anything else positive, though, for the defense that you wanted to touch on?
Keyshawn Nixon with a good game. He led the team in coverage grade. I think part of that is helped by getting the interception. But he also was credited with... I think 10 total tackles, solo and assists, and no missed tackles. Yeah. So he had a good game on defense, and they had to move him around, and he still, I think, did well overall.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a little up and down for him. If I remember correctly, he was also targeted 12 times for 9 catches in this game, is what NFL Pro has it on. Only 79 yards on those, so not a ton, but he was the most targeted defender of the Packers, twice as many targets as the next player. So he did have that pick, which was big, but he was also getting targeted a lot.
And a little up and down.
Yeah, a little up and down in my opinion. But having that pick was massive for Green Bay. They needed a play there. And so that, I think, you'll take that, 12 targets, 9 catches, 79 yards, still a good amount. But if you take the ball away once, that's at least something. But yeah, so that was just one thing I wanted to point out is he did get targeted the most out of any Packers player. And I think part of that is, just how the Lions play offense. They're going to target the slot a lot, and he was forced to play in the slot in the second half a good amount. But, just something I wanted to point out as well. Anything else on the defensive side? Anything that made you think?
So, yeah, but something I've been thinking about, after that game. So they're unable to stop the game-winning, game-clinching drive of the Lions. Is this just who the Packers are? It seems to come up a lot over the past few years, and it's still there. But my question is, and I haven't done this deep dive, is this just a league-wide problem? And we just are very aware every time it happens to the Packers. Does it happen to everybody?
You can't, it's really hard to get a stop at the end of the game.
Yeah.
When the other team needs a field goal and they're starting at the 30, I feel like it's harder than yards. It's harder than ever. And with kickers being as good as they are now, you really only need 30 yards.
30 yards?
That's it? Really?
30 yards gets you a 57-yarder?
Yeah.
58-yarder?
Harder than ever to, stop a
and you're in prevent because you want them to go over the top and get a touchdown.
Exactly. I that's a good question, and it's something to look at. And it also made me think, you end up taking the field goal there at the end of the game, and I get that it's 4th and goal, so fair enough. And you're 4th and goal from the 18, so you're not going to go for it.
Yeah, that was one you can't go for it on 4th on that one.
The question is, on 3rd and goal, should you have tried to get half of it? Should you have not been thrown to the end zone? I don't know. That's just something I was thinking about. I actually don't remember that play specifically now that I think about it. I was thinking about a different play. I got to go double check what they actually did on that 3rd and goal. But anyway, let's move on, though, to special teams, unless there's anything on defense you wanted to touch on.
I think that was it. Did you have any more things that made you think about the secondary, what it's going to look like?
I was a little bit surprised that they went with, not moving Bullard back to safety when Williams got hurt, and they went with Anderson in. So that means that that either means that they didn't want Bullard playing safety halfway through the game because of what happened against Jacksonville, which, fair enough, that didn't go very well for him. Or it means that they like Zane Anderson more than Carrington Valentine. I don't know.
Maybe especially in the slot. I mean, I think their other slot corner is Valentine, who was out as well.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, so Evan Williams
But that's why they'd want to move Bullard.
No, because they would have moved Keyshawn to the slot, which is what they did once Bullard went out. My question is, once Williams goes out, I would have expected Bullard back to safety, Keyshawn to the slot, Stokes and Valentine it.
Do that earlier.
That's what I would have thought they would do.
One step earlier.
Because that's what they did against Jacksonville when Evan Williams went out. Or I guess actually at that point they still had Jair. So they did move Keyshawn to the slot. That's right. And then they brought Valentine in. So I was expecting that. They didn't do that. So, and then Bullard got hurt. So it was, it doesn't really matter. But that was just something that surprised me. But special teams, Dad, anything that you had?
There's not much happened. That
I was
they gave up no return yards and got no return yards.
Yeah, I thought Whelan had 2 good punts and 1 bad punt. He had, 2 that pinned them inside the 15, and then 1 that he only punted it 40 yards, and they had it the 20.
The 22, yeah. It's you might as well boot it. Just boot it as far as you can. Leave it short of the 20.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, a touchback would have been better. So, that's not a good punt. That's a bad punt. But he had 2 good ones, so there's that. But, yeah, it was a nondescript special teams day, which, I'm fine with nondescript special teams days.
Yeah,
that's totally fine.
Made field goal.
Yep, made a field goal. Made the game-tying field goal. There's pressure on that kick. I know it's not a long kick, but we've missed those before. So there is that. But anyway, Dad, let's wrap things up here. Player of the game, who'd you have?
I had Jordan Love.
Yeah. I mean,
as we talked about, he was making plays and was pretty efficient and successful on the week. And, the pressure to sack ratio was good.
Mm-hmm. I had a really tough time with this one. I thought Love was, a worthy choice. But outside of him, I was thinking, do you pick Kenny? Because Kenny had a really good game. I thought about him. I thought about Watson. If he didn't have that fumble, I probably do pick him. But that fumble was brutal. I mean,
really hurt. They finally we're finally moving the ball. I was like, I'm thinking, oh yes, we're finally moving the ball. And...
It would have been our first down in the game that was not by penalty. So like, we would have finally been moving the ball and then fumble because you're just not securing the ball, diving forward. And I get that it's kind of fluky that it got punched out like that, but
he is not holding that thing high and tight. No. It is like
he's reaching
flopping
for
around
like
out there.
3 more yards, which I appreciate fighting for the extra yards, but risk reward, my guy. And then, but so I couldn't pick Watson, even though outside of that, I thought he had a really good game.
I was thinking Jacobs.
I was actually, that was what I was going to say. I ended up going with Jacobs. You know, he ends up with that 3 touchdown game, punches in 3 of them. Should have been 4, if we're being honest. That call was ridiculous. But it is what it is. And so I will go with Jacobs. You know, anytime you have 3 scores on the ground, like that's a really good day. So I went with Jacobs in this one. But Dad, wrapping things up here, any last things that you wanted to leave us with before we say goodbye to listeners?
So I think we know we are good enough to be near the top of the league. We just have to, make the big plays.
Slow and make a few more plays.
All right, get up to a good start, which is on the coaches, I think.
Yeah,
and then come up with the plays on the high leverage situations.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's on the coaches because we pointed out the answer for the blitz in the first half, there wasn't one. And then in the second half, you started shredding it a little bit. And so, but it is what it is. But anyway, this has been our deep dive into that game. Packers once again lose 34-31, 9-4 on the year, 6th in the NFC, 1 game ahead of Washington in 7th, 2 games behind Minnesota in 5th. Going to be fighting for that last spot. But thank you for listening. This has been the Father Son Packers podcast. Once again, please subscribe, whether that's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all 3. Leave a comment, leave a review, tell a friend. We would really appreciate it. It would help us out a lot. Follow us on Twitter at Father Son Packer for updates on injury reports, roster moves, whenever we have new episodes out, content from other Packers content creators, other Packers news, one-stop shop and everything Titletown. Once again, that's at Father Son Packer. We will be back later this week with a preview for the Seahawks game. That's going to be a very big game for Green Bay. Seattle has won 4 in a row, so they're on fire right now. It's going to be a tough matchup. They're playing really well. But anyway, we'll be giving you... Go ahead.
And Cousin Eli and I are going to be there.
That's right. You guys are going to be at that game, so that'll be exciting.
I'm hoping it's not going to be like raining. That would be kind of miserable.
Bring a poncho. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back later this week. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.